The markets are closed, but the business stories are just heating up. Hello, I'm Raine Musñgi. Catch up with us on Business Brief. United States President Donald Trump threatened to escalate a global trade war with further tariffs on European Union goods. That's as major U.S. trading partners said they would retaliate for trade barriers already erected by the U.S. president. Just hours after Trump's 25% duties on all U.S. steel and aluminum imports took effect, Trump said he would impose additional penalties if the EU follows through with its plan to enact counter tariffs on some U.S. goods next month. Trump's action to bulk up protections for American steel and aluminum producers restores effective tariffs on 25% on all imports of the metals and extends the duties to hundreds of downstream products.
As you know, we're going to be doing reciprocal tariffs. So whatever they charge us, we're charging them. Nobody can complain about that. Whatever it is, it doesn't even matter what it is. If they charge us 25 or 20% or 10% or 2% or 200%, then that's what we're charging them.
The European Commission said it would impose counter tariffs on up to $28 billion worth of U.S. goods next month, affecting dental floss, diamonds, bathrobes, and bourbon. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen earlier said the bloc will resume talks with U.S. officials.
As of this morning, the United States is applying a 25% tariff on imports of steel and aluminum. We deeply regret this measure. Tariffs are taxes. They are bad for business and worse for consumers. They are disrupting supply chains. They bring uncertainty for the economy. Jobs are at stake, prices up. Nobody needs that on both sides, neither in the European Union nor in the United States. The European Union must act to protect consumers and business. The countermeasures we take today are strong but proportionate. As the United States are applying tariffs worth $28 billion, we are responding with countermeasures worth 26 billion euros. This matches the economic scope of the tariffs of the United States. Our countermeasures will be introduced in 2 steps, starting with April 1st and fully in place as of April 13th. In the meantime, we will always remain open to negotiations. We firmly believe that in a world fraught with geo-economic and political uncertainties, it is not in our common interest to burden our economies with such tariffs.
The objective is to counterbalance the increased trade value affected by the U.S. tariffs while minimizing the impact on European businesses and consumers. But the disruption caused by tariffs is avoidable if the U.S. administration accepts our extended hand and works with us to strike a deal. So under the President's leadership, I'm ready to negotiate and we are ready to make it happen.
Earlier, Canada, the biggest foreign supplier of steel and aluminum to the U.S., announced 25% retaliatory tariffs on those metals, along with computers, sports equipment, and other products worth some $20 billion in total. Canada had already imposed tariffs worth a similar amount on U.S. goods in response to broader tariffs by Trump. Germany's outgoing Chancellor Olaf Scholz criticized the trade policy of the United States on Wednesday. He said countries need fewer trade barriers, not more, which is why he thinks the U.S. customs regulations are wrong. European Council President Antonio Costa said the EU was open to talking with the U.S. about any trade imbalances and stressed the importance of de-escalation.
But if the United States believe that they are a real problem, then the good way to solve this is to talk. The good way to solve problems is to talk and to address the problems and find solutions. And we are open for this. then we are answering in the family way, but we don't want to escalate. The good way is to de-escalate, talk, solve problems, and continue as good partners.
If tariffs are now imposed in their place, this will do the most damage to the American economy. But it will also harm many others. And so the answer for Europe is clear. We must use our strength, and therefore also respond strongly and appropriately, but always with the prospect of reaching an understanding that avoids tariffs and promotes trade and economic exchange and the prosperity that results from it.
Well, European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde didn't mince words in saying the Eurozone economy is facing exceptional shocks from trade, defense, and even climate issues. Lagarde said inflation volatility and raising the risk that price growth make it impossible for the ECB to signal policy intent, but make it imperative the bank to double down on its 2% inflation target and outline how it reacts to various shocks.
Because our expectations have indeed been swept aside in the last few years, let alone the last few weeks. Established certainties about the international order have been upended. Some alliances have become strained, while others have drawn closer. We have seen political decisions that would have been just unthinkable a few years ago, a few months ago, a few weeks ago, just to see them overturned the following day. So the level of uncertainty we are facing is exceptionally high. But we are also now facing new two-sided shocks, mainly linked to trade and defense, as well as climate change, which can amplify or counteract existing forces. Trade fragmentation and higher defense spending in a capacity-constrained sector could, in principle, push inflation up. Yet US tariffs could also lower demand for EU exports and redirect excess capacity from China to Europe. That would push inflation down. But looking ahead, shocks might feed into inflation more directly and increase volatility. These risks may be particularly acute for the euro area, as we are highly exposed to some of the new types of shocks.
Well, Asian equities were mixed Thursday as market sentiment stabilized after a soft inflation report in the U.S. helped two of the three benchmarks on Wall Street reverse course from 2 days of losses. Bloomberg reports a gauge of regional shares rose for a second consecutive day, while equity indices in Hong Kong and China swung between gains and losses. In Japan, the benchmark Nikkei 225 picked up almost 0.1%, with shares of 7 & I Holdings gaining as much as 3.6% as Canadian convenience store operator Alimentation Couche-Tard announced plans to buy the 7-Eleven operator. South Korea's Kospi Index gained 0.4%, while the Shanghai Composite and Hong Kong's Hang Seng edged down 1.25%. Indian stocks are flat after the South Asia giant's inflation rate cooled to a lower than expected 3.6% in February as vegetable prices edged down. After Ukraine accepted the U.S. proposal for a 30-day ceasefire with Russia and the continued tit-for-tat developments on tariff, investors remain on edge.
A ceasefire in the Ukraine conflict would be a huge positive impact, of course, not at least, but not at first, as of course, for the economical development of Europe. We will see whether it works or not. At least we are as close as we haven't been within the last 3 years. The roller coaster ride is still on its way. Today we are up and positive with a positive start into the market into this day. That's because the hope is to mention first that we are getting a solution in the Ukraine conflict, and on the other hand, that we will have at the end a deal with the United States regarding the tariff politics and the tariff confrontation between Europe and the US. Regarding the tariff conflict between Europe and the US, we see on a midterm basis, of course, huge problems for Europe as well as Germany. Maybe especially for Germany, that would be a harsh impact on a midterm basis. But on a short-term basis, we still hope, and the financial markets are still hoping that we will have, at the end, a deal between the US and Europe, and that's what basically today drives the market.
Well, not everyone is alarmed by the shifting U.S. trade tariffs. People in Vietnam's capital, Hanoi, expressed hope after U.S. President Trump's increased tariffs on all U.S. steel and aluminum imports took effect on Wednesday. Vietnam is the fifth largest steel exporter to the U.S. And traders think the new tariffs might benefit local companies, as most of them had been slapped with 25% levies back in 2018. Vietnam expects to sign pacts with the U.S. this week after its trade minister meets with U.S. trade and energy officials.
The tariff will definitely have an impact. But challenges always come with opportunities. The United States may be a big export country of Vietnamese steel, but Vietnamese firms can use this chance to look for new markets.
Companies will adapt to the tariffs by looking for new markets that are more friendly, and I think exports of steel and aluminum to the United States may fall.
The chief executive of Ferrari said the company was prepared for potential U.S. tariffs on European automakers. Ferrari CEO Benedetto Vigna told CNBC in Singapore Thursday the Italian sports car maker is ready with some countermeasures without providing specifics on the plan. Analysts said late last year that they expect Ferrari to be something of an exception among Europe's automotive sector, considering it is well placed to pass on any increase in prices since it exclusively produces its cars in Italy. Vigna's comments come shortly after the luxury Italian car maker reported a significant upswing in 2024 net profit, citing a strong product mix and growing demand for personal touches to its vehicles. The company also remains on track for the landmark unveiling of its first fully electric car by October. We have to pause for a few reminders, but the biggest business stories from around the country and the markets closing data are up next. Keep it here on Business Brief, only on the Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Your newest source of news and information on cable and free TV, online,
on Trade Talk, joining us this morning,
on mobile.
Simulan na natin ang agenda.
This is BNC. We are everywhere.
Welcome back to Business Brief. One water concessionaire is raising rates in April, while another will postpone the increase to the next quarter. Details from a correspondent, Sujin Kim. Sujin, go ahead.
Yes, Raine. Manila Water customers will see a slight increase in their water bills starting April as the concessionaire implements its quarterly foreign currency differential adjustment. The adjustment, amounting to 4 centavos per cubic meter, is driven by foreign exchange fluctuations following the peso's depreciation against the U.S. dollar in the previous quarter. Currently, the peso stands at 58.44 against the dollar compared to 56.07 in the previous period. Meanwhile, Maynilad has deferred its supposed 9 centavo increase, choosing to incorporate it in the next quarter instead. The Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System, or MWSS, clarified that water concessionaires do not profit from FCDA adjustments, as these are fully pass-on charges reflecting foreign currency exchange fluctuations. Low-income households consuming 10 cubic meters or less will not be affected, as they remain covered by Manila Water's subsidies. Regular customers can expect an increase of between 24 and 90 centavos per month, depending on their consumption level. MWSS also stressed that the adjustment is unrelated to the summer season. However, higher water usage during hotter months may still result in higher bills. The agency urged the public to practice water conservation to mitigate the impact on their monthly expenses. And those are latest updates from Quezon City. Back to you, Raine.
Thank you so much for that report, Sujin Kim. Former President Rodrigo Duterte now in the custody of the International Criminal Court. Duterte arrived in the Hague prison facility Wednesday, where he will be detained while facing murder charges over his bloody war on drugs. He was immediately assessed by ICC medical personnel in coordination with his personal nurse. Pro-Duterte supporters gathered outside the prison, holding banners, chanting Duterte's name, and waving Philippine flags. In a video before his arrival, Duterte acknowledged the long legal battle ahead of him.
Okay ako, donatory. And I think this is something to do with the law and order noon. At sinasabi ko naman sa mga pulis at military na trabaho kayo at ako ang managot. So ito na nga, for all of the whatever happened in the past, ako na yung nag-front sa ating law enforcement at military. Sinabi ko na I will protect you and I will ako ang managot sa lahat.
His daughter, Vice President Sara Duterte, also arrived in the Netherlands in hopes of offering her assistance to her father and bringing him back to the Philippines. When people come together, the rule of law can prevail. That assertion from ICC Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan following the arrest of former President Duterte. He says this is an important moment for the victims of the drug war.
And I think it's important to show that the office has been working with communities, with states, with international organizations, with other partners to make sure that the investigation could be focused and could move as effectively as possible. And the fact that it's been executed is important to victims. It means a lot, I think, to victims. That's the feedback we've already received. And many say that international law is not as strong as we want, and I agree with that. But as I also repeatedly emphasize, international law is not as weak as some may think. It's important to underline as we now start a new stage of proceedings that Mr. Duterte is presumed innocent. He will make his initial appearance before the court soon. And the focus of the office is on the judicial proceedings, on proving its case before the judges of the International Criminal Court.
The detained former president is currently running for Davao City mayor. The poll body says he's still considered a candidate unless he withdraws from the race. Joash Malimban filed this report.
According to Comelec Chairman George Garcia, the legalities surrounding Duterte's situation are still in the gray area. Garcia clarified that he does not want to be speculative and said that in the existing electoral process of the Comelec, Duterte will continue to be proclaimed if he wins the elections in May. One question in mind here, Mai, is once proclaimed, how will Duterte perform his duties if by this time he is still detained in The Hague? Garcia said that if this was a usual case, Duterte may perform his duties despite being detained until a final conviction is reached. In this case, Garcia said that they are still not sure as to how this would go, since there's the issue of territorial jurisdiction. A temporary vacancy will commence if the proclaimed official cannot assume position or perform his duties and responsibilities. The second in command, or in this case, the vice mayor, will assume the acting mayor position upon the declaration of the Department of Interior and Local Government.
Joash Manimban, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Well, senatorial candidates allied with the Duterte family is surging in the latest Pulse Asia survey. Former President Duterte's close aide, re-electionist Senator Bongo, now taking the top spot from ACT-CIS party list representative Erwin Tulfo. Duterte's police chief, re-electionist Senator Bato de la Rosa, also jumping from outside the so-called Magic 12. He now ranks 4th to 7th. The survey was conducted from February 20th to the 26th, several days after Vice President Sara Duterte was impeached by the House of Representatives on February 5. It's still too early to tell if the arrest of former President Duterte will affect the business sector. That's according to George Barcelon, chairman of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, during a business forum with Slovenia. While the arrest surprised him, Barcelona assures the public they are actively pursuing foreign investments and exporting Filipino products. For Diwa Ginigundo, former deputy governor of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, Duterte's arrest may boost the economy as it will send the signal that the government does not tolerate extrajudicial killings and there is rule of law in the Philippines. Although he believes that the arrest may cause short-term market disruption, he says it reinforces the Philippines' legal integrity, potentially attract more investments in the long run. The Philippine economy is expected to grow by 6% in 2025 and 2026, making the country one of the fastest-growing economies in Asia. Credit watcher Moody's rating explains this is due to expectation that the inflation rate will remain between 2 to 4%, which will allow the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas to further cut interest rates in 2025. The agency also projects that the domestic consumption investment will improve, giving more stimulus to the economy. Moody's, meanwhile, maintains a stable outlook for the Philippine banking system due to strong economic growth, further rate cuts, and stable inflation. It adds these will drive credit demand and support loan quality. Philippine shares snapped their two-day losing streak, surging 0.75% to 62.42. The main index was the second best performer in the region after Malaysia. Still, decliners beat advancers 93 to 90, while value turnover reached 5.7 billion pesos. Mining and oil led the rally, rising almost 3%, with Nickel Asia leading the pack. The property counter dragged the market, with MegaWorld, SM Prime Holdings, and Philinvest Land leading losses. Alfred Benjamin Garcia, research head at AP Securities, earlier said investors are wary of political instability following the arrest of former President Duterte, while Unicapital Securities head of research Wendy Estacio Cruz told the Inquirer political uncertainty here at home is amplifying the impact of global market movements. Meanwhile, at the foreign exchange market, the peso is currently trading at 57.35 to the greenback, slightly weaker than Wednesday's close of 57.33. And that's a wrap for today's Business Brief. I'm Raine Musñgi. Join us again tomorrow as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business, only here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel, always on top.